Welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan, and the topic of this 10-minute moan is quite a disturbing article that's just came past me by Daniel Sanderson in the Telegraph. And the headline is SNP backs police plans to stop investigating thousands of crimes. Right? Forces in Scotland agree to roll out a scheme where offences such as theft will not necessarily be allocated a front-line officer, says Daniel Sanderson in the said Telegraph. And I'll put a link in the description below so you can read at your leisure. I'm not going to go through verbatim every part of Daniel's article, but the key facts in it are just absolutely incredible. In Scotland, we're rolling out a thing where you, as a member of the public, report a crime and someone in a call centre, not a police officer, not someone with experience of crime and crime stopping, but a member of the public in a call centre will decide if your reported crime deserves the attention of a police officer or not. And if they don't investigate the crime, what they're promising to do is they'll stick it into a database somewhere so that if anything comes up later on with a wee bit more evidence, then they'll give it to a police officer to look at. So what they're basically saying is, unless it's a shoot-you-in penalty kick crime where you, as a member of the public, can substantiate enough evidence for the police to give the resources to a police officer, then they'll no bother even looking at it. They'll stick it in a vault, and if they get some further evidence about the same crime, they'll pull it back from the vault and then give it to a police officer. But the most crazy, insane part in my eyes is it's a call centre worker that makes that decision. This is criminal. Anyway, I'll just go through some of the article in summary. Almost 25,000 crimes per year in Scotland will no longer be investigated under a controversial overhaul of police backed by the SNP. Police Scotland said the pilot in the northeast of Scotland, in which almost 5% of crimes were not allocated to an officer, had been deemed a success and would now be rolled out across the country. The force said that the plans to expand the proportionate approach would free up time for frontline officers, numbers of which have been drastically cut over recent years owing to funding pressures. Now, I kind of get that if you've not got enough policemen, then you would, instead of just giving them more pressure and giving them more cases to look at, that you should have some process in place to decide where their time's best spent. I totally get that. What I would prefer as a citizen of Glasgow, probably one of the highest crime rates in Scotland for a lot of incidents, I would prefer more cops in the street if that's all right, so we didn't need to cut back on the amount that actually got to a police officer. However, critics described the pilot as policing waving the white flag to criminals. I kind of agree with that. And in contrast to the approach taken in England, where police forces have been told they must investigate all crimes such as theft, senior officers said their plan had the support of SNP ministers, while policing being a devolved issue. That's right, we all know that. SNP look after crime and policing and prisons in Scotland. It's a devolved power. Can't blame Westminster for that one. Asked whether the SNP government were aware of the plans and supportive of them, Emma Bond, the Assistant Chief Constable, said, yeah, they absolutely are aware. Just to reinforce this, is not a policy of not investigating. This is about us having the victim-centred approach to assessing calls to determine whether or not they are avenues for us to investigate. Even if there is an incident that is filed and we don't have active lines of inquiry, we will reopen and investigate further upon any new information that's received. It doesn't mean once something is closed, it may never be revisited again. So unless when you phone up the cops now and you can give them enough evidence to basically go and arrest somebody, they ain't looking at it. While there is no list of offences that will no longer be investigated by officers, she suggested that some thefts and cases of criminal damage were among those most likely to fall under the new scheme. The value of an item will not be a factor in deciding whether it is allocated. Blah, 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 blah. Now, there's a bit in here that I want to get to Aye. The scheme will mean that when members of the public report a crime, it will not be allocated to a frontline officer if no potential lines of inquiry are identified by a call centre worker. So basically, if you phone up and say, somebody's vandalised my garden shed and destroyed my property, do you have CCTV? No. Do you have any idea what happened? No. When did it happen? Don't know. Went to my bed at 10 o'clock. It was fine. Got up this morning at 9 and it wasn't fine. Right. There's probably nowhere much for that to go. But instead of letting a police officer decide that, a call centre worker. I genuinely am kind of lost for words. And for those that have watched a lot of my videos, I'm not normally lost for words. But this carry on has got me stumped. It's just horrendous. Under the trial in Aberdeen, 472 crimes were reported. 4.6% of those made over the 12-week period were directly filed, meaning they were officially recorded but not actively investigated by a police officer. Got to a call centre worker, nowhere else. Police Scotland projections suggest that an estimated 24,242 crimes will not be allocated to a frontline officer per year, which otherwise would have been once the scheme rolls out nationwide. They did say, however, that it would save 136,000 hours of police hours investigating, which could be more effectively spent elsewhere. And I kind of get that. But that's because we don't have enough police officers. So go and get us more police officers and start investigating all crimes. You know, members of the public, I think, are not stupid, right? I think you understand that not every single crime that's reported to the police will end up in two things. One, an arrest, and two, a conviction. That's not the expectations of people. But if something was to happen to you, your property, or your family, you would expect it to be at least looked at by a police officer with a bit of experience of investigating such things, not a decision made by a call centre operative and filed to wait for another day when we may get further evidence about the crime that happened to you. There was another bit here, blah blah blah, something about UK, Police Scotland, where is it? It's basically, it's going totally against and the opposite of what the English police forces are expected to do. I wish I could find this, but it's definitely a bit in here. So basically, here we go. However, critics describe the pilot as waving the white flags, and in contrast to the approach taken in England, where police forces have been told they must investigate all crimes such as thefts. So what we've got now is, as a member of the public, a UK citizen, we've now got a two-tier expectation in what happens should you be a victim of some types of crimes. Because if it happened south of Berwick, the expectation is every reported crime gets investigated by a police officer. And that's not the case anymore in Scotland. And for a long time, a lot of unionists and a lot of people, not just unionists, but a lot of people who don't like the SNP, have felt that they are trying to be more soft-handed with criminals. And other things that we've heard through time is, you know, the lowering of sentencing if you're under 24, because they feel that that's no fair, because, you know, your brain's not fully developed. This is the same people, by the way, that give votes to 16-year-olds and wanted to bring down the age of being able to self-identify. These people, same people. But in Scotland, they feel that you shouldn't sentence people under 24 years of age as severely as you would with a 25-year-old, because their brains haven't fully developed. You getting this? You understand where I'm struggling with all this nonsense? So that's one instance where the Scottish public feel there's a sort of softly approach to criminals and criminalisation. And we're in a society where people don't feel safe and they don't feel that the police are adequate. And I don't blame police officers for this. You know, if there's not enough of them, they can't do their job. But in a two-tier policing system within Scotland, and now we're in a two-tier policing system within the United Kingdom, because crimes are just not going to get reported. Not going to get reported, but that's probably a knock-on effect, because if you have something stolen out your garden. And when you phone up 911 or whatever the number is, you ain't going to get much evidence to give the police. So you'll know that it's probably going to be a slim chance that it's going to be looked at by a police officer. It'll get filed off somewhere, and if lo and behold, they find some more evidence that can tie in with your crime, they might come back and speak to you. So, if people are aware of that, then law-abiding citizens will probably stop reporting crime. Then the crime numbers come down. Then the Scottish Government say, look at us, we're fantastic, despite Westminster being terrible, and it'll be their fault that we've got low police officers, because that's what they do. They'll be saying, and look, even despite the challenges of financing the police, we've managed to bring down reported crime. Well, of course you will, because you ain't dealing with most of it as crime. And the other thing that will happen is criminals ain't stupid. Okay, they're far from it. Some of them are very intelligent people. So if you can figure out crimes that are not going to get looked into, and probably through time not even reported by the public because there's an acceptance that we can't catch them, then those are the crimes that criminals will be attracted to. I don't know, as if I'm Ronnie Cray or anything. I mean, I know some people that went to jail, but I could probably count them in my one hand. But people I know, nobody was into a crime thinking they're going to get caught. So if you've got some crimes that are available to you that you know are not even going to get investigated, then if you're criminal mind, they're probably the ones you would go and do. So the whole thing's farcical. It'll lead to less people reporting crime, less criminals getting caught, and the SNP will go, look at us, we've brought down the crime numbers. No, you haven't. The crimes went up because more people will commit crimes if they know there is no chance of them getting caught. That is just common sense and logic being applied, and you just don't normally do that. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please subscribe. But most importantly of all, unless you're one of these crackpot SNP cult that thinks things like this is good, have a great day. Cheery bye now.